Sunday.
It's hard to explain, okay? But
All day. All year round.
it's so mysterious.
This is who we are.
This is who we are.
WAVR.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar and 7 p.m. in Lagos. Good evening and thank you for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. First, our top stories. Junta Guinea-Bissau appoints Prime Minister, new Chief of Staff for the transition. In Ghana, minority slams Parliament over Fenyo Markin referral calls for public apology.
The immediate withdrawal of the Privileges Committee's petition. It is gross abuse of process and an affront to justice.
Nigerian bishop confirms 265 still missing after Niger school abduction, says no contact from kidnappers.
So we're able to get 50 out of the 315, including staff and teachers that could not be accounted for. And out of that number, we deducted them from the 315. We now have 265 as at now.
An international monetary fund warns Senegal over surging liquidity pressures. Please stay tuned for details of the stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. We'll begin in Guinea-Bissau, where the military authority there has appointed Elidio Verate as the country's prime minister for a 12-month term. According to the authorities, he will hold this position concurrently with the finance portfolio, making him the central figure in the political and economic management of the transition. A day earlier, Major General Thomas Jassy was appointed Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces in accordance with current military legislation. Abdullah Hassan completes the story.
In the aftermath of the November 26 coup in Guinea-Bissau, the appointment of a prime minister, which came the day before that of a new chief of general staff of the armed forces, constitutes the first strong measures of General Horta Ntam to structure the transition, while ECOWAS has suspended the country from all its decision-making bodies and demands the immediate restoration of constitutional order. The appointment takes immediate effect, the Presidency's Office of Communication and Public Relations said in a statement, adding that Inter-A made the decision in the exercise of his powers and responsibilities. The High Military Command on Friday lifted the curfew it imposed during its military takeover and authorized the movement of people and public transportation across all neighborhoods of the capital, Bissau. Calm has returned to the capital, with people and vehicles circulating through the city's streets after army checkpoints were lifted. The main stock exchange and market in outlying districts, as well as commercial banks, have also reopened. Verate is a close ally of the deposed President Umaro Sissoco Embalo, having served as his party's campaign director during the legislative election on Sunday. Appointed for a maximum of 1 year, General Horta Ntam promised to fight vigorously against drug trafficking, which he accused of having captured Guinean democracy.
Abdullah Hassan filed the report. Meanwhile, Guinea-Bissau deposed head of state Umaro Sissoco Embalo is currently in Dakar. Embalo arrived in Senegal late Thursday after an emergency virtual meeting convened by the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State. During the discussion chaired by ECOWAS Chair and Sierra Leone President Julius Maada Bio, several measures agreed upon and adopted, among them the setting up of a mediation committee to engage the coup leaders in Bissau, the outcome of which resulted in the release of Umaro Sissoco Embalo. The regional bloc also set up a delegation to be headed by Farouk Singbe, President of Togo's National Council, to ensure a swift return to constitutional order in Guinea-Bissau. As Francis Boniface reports, Bissau's member has been suspended by the regional bloc.
A statement from the Senegalese government on Thursday evening announced the arrival of our state president Umaru Sissoco Embalo in Dakar. The state president's departure was made possible through an extraordinary ECOWAS summit of heads of state held virtually. The leaders firmly condemned the seizure of power by force. They also called for the restoration of constitutional order and the immediate release of all detainees. ECOWAS also set up a mediation committee composed of Senegal, Cape Verde, and Togo, which will soon travel to Bissau to monitor the implementation of these measures. The Senegalese government statement specifies that since the beginning of the crisis, Senegalese authorities have been in direct communication with all relevant Bissau-Guinean actors. ECOWAS has suspended Guinea-Bissau from the bloc. On his part, Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary-General, calls for respect of the constitutional order. The African Union and European Union have issued the same message. Umaru Sissoco Embalo's main rival in the election, Fernando Diaz da Costa, claims he won the election and urges the military to recognize this. Meanwhile, a new chief of staff of the army was appointed yesterday in the person of General Thomas Jassy. The curfew imposed on Wednesday has been lifted and economic activities are resuming in Bissau.
Francis Boniface filed the report. Meanwhile, ECOWAS Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Ambassador Abdel Fattah Musa, is urging citizens across West Africa to take a frontline role in safeguarding democratic governance. It says ECOWAS can only act decisively against electoral fraud and unconstitutional attempt to retain power when citizens themselves are vigilant and demanding accountability. He also warns that peer accountability among African leaders has broken down, calling for a new generation of bold, principled champions willing to speak truth to their colleagues when democratic norms are threatened.
One of the ECOWAS mandates is that of prevention. And prevention has to be carried out through citizens themselves. Okay, if you look at where we have been successful in preventing electoral fraud, in preventing unconstitutional maintenance of power, it is where the citizens are vigilant. Where the citizens are not, ECOWAS is going to be very, very difficult for ECOWAS to intervene. The regimes will tell you, who tells you there's a problem here? But where citizens are active, and then they make sure that they hold their governments accountable, then organizations like ECOWAS, African Union, can then attach their interventions to them, telling the government, look, your own populations are rising up against you and we need to change this. But it begins with building the awareness of citizens to make sure that they are the first respondents when it comes to protecting democratic values in their countries. That is very important. There is also important to have peer review among our heads of state.
Is that happening? Because that's a concern that it's not happening.
It's not happening, so we need champions. And I think younger and more proactive leaders are emerging in Africa today. We need champions among them who can speak truth to their peers.
ECOWAS Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Ambassador Abdel Fattah Musa.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Well, in Ghana, tensions flared in Parliament after the minority sharply criticized the decision to refer Alexander Afenyo-Markin to the Privileges Committee. The minority argues that the referral, which follows allegations of contempt over his participation in the ECOWAS Parliament after being removed from Ghana's delegation, was unfair and politically motivated. They say the move undermines parliamentary fairness and have called on the leadership of Parliament to issue a public apology and withdraw what they describe as an unwarranted referral. The Speaker, however, maintains that the matter must go through the Privileges Committee to protect the integrity of the House. The controversy adds a fresh layer of tension in Ghana's legislature, with both sides standing firm on their positions. Here is Deputy Minority Leader Patricia Apiaje speaking.
We in the minority, we are here and we demand the following. 1. The immediate withdrawal of the Privileges Committee's petition. It is gross abuse of process and an affront to justice. A public apology from the Speaker and majority leader, to ECOWAS and to the people of Ghana for the international embarrassment they caused. 3, the passage of a resolution restoring Honorable Afenyo Makin's name to Ghana's ECOWAS delegation and affirming Ghana's commitment to the rule of law under Article 75 of the Constitution. 4, an end to the coordinated persecution of the minority leader by the Attorney General's Office, NDC operatives, and party foot soldiers. And finally, 5th, the prosecution of Chief Sofo Azoka for his public threat.
Deputy Minority Leader in Ghana's Parliament, Patricia Apiaje, speaking there. In Togo, the M66 movement has announced a major demonstration for December 8, a highly symbolic date coinciding with the opening of the 9th Pan-African Congress in Lomé. The movement hopes to capitalize on this international visibility to draw attention to what it considers an authoritarian drift by the regime. Lacking a formal hierarchical structure and an official spokesperson, the M66 relies on a decentralized organization fueled by social anger, digital creativity, and strong diaspora engagement. Augustin Colley brings us details in his report.
In its recent statements, the movement denounces the constitutional reform that transformed Togo into a parliamentary system, arguing that it further entrenches the current regime in power. However, the authorities claim it is an institutional renewal. The M66 sees it as a mechanism allowing for Nyasengbe to maintain significant political influence despite internal and international criticism. Why the planned mobilization is intended to be peaceful, the risk of tensions remains real following the disruption of previous attempts to gather by security forces, and several supporters claim to have been intimidated. However, calls to action are multiplying on X, TikTok, Facebook, and WhatsApp, where the movement already has tens of thousands of supporters. The M66 wants to make December 8 a test of strength and a clear signal sent to both the government and the international community. The M66, short for June 6 movement, takes its name from the citizens' demonstrations of June 6, 2025, which arose in reaction to a tense political climate and recurring social frustrations. This date marked the emergence of an atypical collective, young without a designated leader, advocating for complete horizontal organization and relying on social media as its primary tool for organization and communication.
Augustin Colley filed a report. Now, Nigeria and the United States are moving to tighten security cooperation as Abuja battles persistent threats ranging from armed groups and the northwest extremist activity in the Lake Chad Basin. President Bola Tinubu has approved the Nigerian delegation to a new joint working group with Washington aimed at strengthening coordination on security, diplomacy, and humanitarian response. Usman Mao reports.
The Nigerian government says the joint working group emerged from recent high-level engagement in Washington, led by the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu. Ribadu will chair the Nigerian side, supported by a team drawn from strategic ministries and security institutions. Among them are the Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Defense, Interior, and Humanitarian Affairs, as well as the Chief of Defense Staff, the Inspector General of Police, and the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency. Two senior officials, Idayat Hassan of the Office of the National Security Advisor and Paul Alabi of Nigerian Embassy in Washington, will coordinate the secretariat. According to the presidency, President Tinubu has tasked the group to work closely with American counterparts to ensure seamless implementation of agreements reached across multiple sectors, including counter-terrorism, intelligence sharing, humanitarian assistance, and governance reforms. The move comes amid renewed international scrutiny of Nigeria's security landscape. In recent years, global attention has intensified from allegations of targeted killings to debate over religious freedoms, with U.S. lawmakers repeatedly raising concerns about violence affecting communities across the country. Just last week, a U.S. House Committee on Africa reviewed Nigeria's designation under the Country of Particular Concern category, hearing sharply divided testimonies on the drivers of insecurity and the government's response. For the Tinubu administration, however, the message remains clear. Protecting citizens is a top priority, and Nigeria, it insists, is committed to safeguarding tolerance and safeguarding all religious communities. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Meanwhile, Bishop Bulus Yohana, chairman of the Christian Association of Nigeria, Kani, Northwest Niger State, and Catholic Bishop of Kotangora Diocese, has clarified that in the mass abduction at St. Mary's Catholic School, Papiri, in Agwara local government area, 265 pupils and teachers remain missing with no contact yet from the abductors. Speaking on local media on Friday, Johanna said the diocese has yet to receive any communication from the kidnappers. Initial report estimated that 215 pupils and 12 teachers were missing. However, the figure increased significantly after a detailed verification process involving community leaders, security operatives, and diocesan officials. A head count conducted the morning after the attack confirmed that 303 students missing and 12 teachers unaccounted for, bringing the total number to 315 abducted persons. In subsequent days, 50 pupils escaped and reunited with their families.
Because of, the shooting today, and everyone was scared. So many of them tried to escape, or many escaped into the bushes around. And so at the end of the day, they were able to make a way with some of them. And we don't know the number of pupils, students, and teachers taken away. As head count in the morning, when everywhere was calm, we had 303 pupils and students missing, and 12 teachers also not seen. And so we added that number to make it 315 that cannot be accounted for after taking the head count. Now, this happened, and so many of them went into the bush. And of course, when something happened and you run away from danger, the last thing you want to do is to go back to the same place. So some of them went, most of them went, those that escaped, they went into they went back home to their villages. And so when we started having calls of those that were reunited with their parents, so we're able to get 50 out of the 315, including staff and teachers that could not be accounted for. And out of that number, we deducted them from the 315. We now have 265 as at now. That is the number that is missing.
Bishop Bulus Yohana is the chairman of the Christian Association of Nigeria in Northwest Niger State. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. A junta in Guinea-Bissau appoints Prime Minister and new Chief of Staff for the transition. In Ghana, Minority Islam's Parliament over Fayon Markin referral calls for public apology. Nigerian Bishop confirms 265 still missing after Niger school abduction, says no contact from kidnappers. And still ahead in the news, International Monetary Fund IMF warns Senegal over surging liquidity pressures. We do have a guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Don't forget, we are streaming live on wadr.org, and do follow our live streamings on YouTube and Facebook. Senegal's government says the International Monetary Fund is raising concerns over what it calls a large amount of liquidity the country needs to meet its financing obligations. Finance Minister Sheikh Diwa said on Friday that Senegal requires nearly 6 billion CFA francs each year to service its commitments, a level the IMF considers unusually high and potentially risky for the economy. The concern comes against the backdrop of what the IMF describes as previously hidden or misreported debts under the former administration, debts that have now become to light and significantly expanded the country's financing gap. The fund says the lack of transparency has complicated its current engagement with Dakar and raised questions about the true health of Senegal's public finances. Economists warn that unless the government tightens fiscal discipline, the country could face higher borrowing costs and reduce investor confidence. But Senegal's finance minister insists the situation is under control. The next stages of IMF engagement and how Dakar responds will play a major role in shaping the country's economic outlook in 2026. Farmers in the Gambia say they are under growing financial pressure after the government kept the official groundnut price unchanged for the third year in a row. The price remains at about $518 per ton, a level farmers argue has not kept pace with rising production costs. WDR Sang did a report from Banjul.
Groundnuts remain the Gambia's biggest cash crop, sustaining tens of thousands of rural households across the North Bank, Central River, and Upper River regions. But many farmers say the economies of growing the crop are becoming increasingly difficult. Baisin, a farmer from Jokado in the North Bank region, says the fixed farm gate price is undermining livelihoods.
The fixed groundnut price simply does not match with the rising cost of production. Everything from seed, fertilizer, and labor has become more expensive, yet the price farmers receive has stayed the same. This gap is pushing many families into financial hardship.
He, however, calls on the government for urgent intervention.
The government needs to implement a fair and flexible pricing system that reflects the real cost of production and current market conditions. Farmers also need access to available inputs and credit.
Farmers argue that the cost of fertilizer, transport, and labor has risen sharply in recent years, driven by global supply disruptions and persistent domestic inflation. Lamin Diba is an economist.
But one policy initiative that the government could take could be to set price floor, a minimum price, whereby no farmer in this country will be forced to sell a ton of groundnut below that minimum price.
The concern comes as the state-run National Food Security Processing and Marketing Corporation announced it has secured $2 billion, which is equivalent to $27.2 million to purchase groundnuts this season, an attempt to guarantee farmers a reliable buyer. Meanwhile, the Gambia Bureau of Statistics reports that annual inflation has remained in the double digits for the past 2 years, further increasing the cost of essential farming inputs. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Sangdana Mendy, reporting from Banjul.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, our guest this evening is Dr. Wadr Liberty, a Nigerian security consultant. He joins for reactions on two major security directives issued by President Bola Tinubu amid the rising insecurity across the country. This week, the president directed the recall of all police VIP protection officers, totaling over 11,500. The second measure was announced on Thursday, the inauguration of delegation to engage U.S. authorities on security cooperation to address the plethora of security challenges the country faces. But for Dr. Wadr Liberty, more than the directives, there is need for the political will.
Thank you for having me. But the truth of the matter, therefore, is that I just see that as a waste of time. I see that as a waste of time. Because there are issues that need to be addressed. One, is that the first thing that we need to see the state do is to show commitment and show political will to end insecurity. And these are the ways they should do it. I expect that they will do it. One is that it is not the bandits or the Boko Haram members. It is not the foot soldiers that need to be dealt with or need to be addressed. We are talking in terms of the sponsors. Nigerian state really needs to go after the sponsors of insurgency and insecurity in this country, put them to trial and send them to jail if convicted. Again, Nigeria is one of the countries that bandits, kidnappers, and Boko Haram members make phone calls with their cell phone and demand ransom with their cell phones. However, this country, we have NIN, that we were told that by the time you register your phone, you can make calls without being tracked. These bandits also make phone, also upload videos online. So the question you ask yourself is, the Nigerian state actually knows where these bandits are. The Nigerian state actually do not want to step on toes because of conflict entrepreneur in the form of political capital or economic capital. It is when we discern the criminals that we begin to talk of de-radicalization.
Do you think these are some of the issues that will come up during talks by U.S. and the Nigerian delegation under the new cooperation strategy to end all forms of insecurity in Nigeria? Do you think these are some of the issues or areas of concentration that will be discussed?
Well, I don't know what we are going to be discussing because I'm not there. But it's important to say that the approach to Nigerian states to insecurity outside denial, efforts to deny the killing. So, as a matter of fact, what the Nigerian government is even interested in doing is to do diplomacy, to find a way to present Nigeria as a country that does not have serious killing or serious crime or serious insecurity issues. So I do not expect that the Nigerian government will go to US because you first of all have to own up to the fact that you have a problem. It is when you own up to the fact that you have a problem that you will be able to address it. And that's why I say every intervention must have to achieve three things. One is that the Nigerian people, the Nigerian government, those who speak on government and government officials, they need to understand what the issues are. They really need to have a clear understanding of what the issues are. Two is that they need to understand they are part and parcel of the solution. And three, they need to take action. The political elite needs to be dealt with. The president needs to understand that those who compromise security in this country because of conflict entrepreneur should be dealt with. I am sorry to say, let me ask you, let's assume that we have gotten insecurity, we have gotten some relative level of stability, to begin to address the issues, the political elite needs to be dealt with. The president needs to understand that those who compromise security in this country because of conflict entrepreneur should be dealt with. I am sorry to say, let me ask you.
Well, Dr. Aldo Liberty is a Nigerian security consultant. In sport news, Nigeria's Super Eagles captain William Troost-Ekong has drawn the curtain on a remarkable international career, announcing his retirement from the Nigerian national team following the country's failure to secure qualification for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Ekong's decision came in the immediate aftermath of Nigeria's painful defeat to DR Congo in the final round of the CAF World Cup playoffs. According to team sources, the 31-year-old informed his teammates in the dressing room that the match would be his last appearance for the Super Eagles. Despite stepping away from active duty, the central defender revealed he will still travel with the squad to Morocco for the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations, but only in a supportive, non-playing role. He wished the players well ahead of the tournament. He had long dreamt of leading them to as captain. Troost-Ekong's retirement brings an emotional closure to a defining era for the national team. Elsewhere, the Black Queens have officially opened their training camp in Birmingham with a squad of 16 players as they prepare for their highly anticipated friendly against England. Led by head coach Kim Lars Bojegrin, the team arrived in England on Thursday via British Airways and immediately set sights on intensive preparations. The squad will train at the Bodymore Health Facilities in the West Midlands, focusing on tactics and team cohesion ahead of the clash with the Lionesses. The camp provides the perfect environment for Bojegrin to assess his squad and fine-tune strategies against one of the world's strongest sides. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Fadi Lusso and Mustafa Sek for the technical support. Let's keep the conversation coming on all of our social media platforms, TikTok, X, Instagram, at WDR English. I am Imo Edet. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Imi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County.
Radio Kaigama 94.5 FM Niba County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio Banga Liberia, Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinion.